Please don't. Oh, let's put on the glasses to hide the tiredness and the sadness. There we go. Now
there we go.
Like a productive member of society.
That's why I do it.
Do we do an intro or anything? How does this work?
Of course, now my brain is like, no, you're going to leave this in.
Save yourself some time.
Yeah, there's no intro. Like I said, it's a conversation that just happens to be recorded. So how are you doing?
On a Wednesday, things are changing on a day-to-day basis. Working as a contractor for the federal government it's interesting times. So little what are all the words for dealing with piles of change? I think exhausted.
Denial? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, yeah. I mean, maybe. I definitely not acceptance. Definitely haven't reached that. Definitely not day drinking. No, it has been as it is intended to be a fire hose, and part of my tasks today were removing my pronouns from various government servers because that's verboten. So just waiting for the next things.
We're at that level of pedantry now, huh? Okay.
Yes. Yep. Okay. No more. I don't know if we're just not supposed to use any pronouns. In speech or it changes day by day, but the language police are out there and yeah. So yeah.
If it gets to the point where they say, hey, you can't say they, right. I mean, you could substitute that with fuck off.
Yeah. Yeah. I that would be the only way to deal with that. Because it just, I think, keep that in. Am I allowed to cough? Cut this out.
Yeah. Honestly, no humans. Okay. You should have gotten this out of your system before we recorded.
Unfortunately, I'm drinking spicy tea, so I'm putting it into my system as we're talking.
Oh, okay.
I'll switch to water. Right. Let's try that.
I'm drinking water too.
I was like, ginger, turmeric, spicy tea. That'll be good. Well, this is how we learn.
Thud.
So, yeah, wait, what was the question? Where were we? I don't remember.
The question is, how are you? And it kind of spiraled from there. So that tells me everything I need to know. Yeah. Anyway. Peter.
Yes.
Thank you. When we were previously talking, we talked about finding purpose within an organization at the personal level, at the team level, and I was thinking in terms of that previous conversation, which totally should have been recorded because we were brilliant. How one goes about doing that in a time of complete chaos.
Yeah.
Fix it, Peter. Fix it.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm on it. I think, it's you're always finding purpose, right? You're always, I'm not going to say you, I'm going to say me. I'm always looking for purpose. My purpose changes. It could be day to day. I don't know if I have this is my fate. This is my purpose in life. When it comes to work, there are quite a few things that give me purpose. I generally just like to work. I like to make things. I like to create things that weren't there before. I have jumped between being a loner and I'm an introvert, so maybe that's a better word. But I like working alone. I like working with people in different ways. And yeah, all of those things, if I'm doing them well, if I'm connecting with the things I'm doing, I feel like I have purpose doing that. But then any of those things could become sort of dangerous and anti-purpose things. So I can work too hard and burn myself out and then wonder, what the hell am I doing? It's like purpose feels like when everything's working correctly and you're moving forward in a direction that is challenging and makes sense to you, and you're reflected in the work that you're doing. And sometimes even going in that direction can send you down the wrong path. Again, me, not you. So yeah, it really is fun. It's a constant kind of having to adjust to figure out what my purpose is again. I think there are some people who are a lot more focused and more often know who they are and see themselves in the world around them and are connected to that. For me, I think I have to dig deeper and remind myself of who I am on a regular basis. And that, true in the organization, true in other spots too. But yeah.
Do you do that purposefully? Sorry.
No,
I didn't mean it that way, but like with intention. Let me phrase it that way. Like,
no, I liked the first phrasing. Because yeah, it is. I don't think so. I think there's a survival element to finding purpose. Like, I want to feel like the thing that I'm doing in life fits with what I like to do, which is generally to help people and to make things and to enjoy myself and have a good time. And when all those things are connected, then I'm moving towards my purpose. But I don't think I cannot do that. I have trouble letting go of that kind of thing. So am I doing it purposefully? Am I working towards like my own self-interest, my own best interest all the time? No. And I definitely forget to do it all the time. So the intention is there more often than, I'm able to achieve it, I think. I'll wake up in the morning and say, all right, I'm going to change my morning schedule and I'm going to do this and that and the other. But, oftentimes I'll be thinking that that's my purpose, to actually say exercise. I've heard, people say that is a good thing. But then I'll kind of fall down my normal track of like, okay, of these things need to get done. And otherwise, I don't know what happens if those things don't get done. And, and then I'm working towards getting things done that don't necessarily match what I'm trying to do with my life, what I'd like to do, but somebody's going to die if I don't do them. Or yeah, maybe not, probably not, definitely not. I'm not in charge of saving anybody's life, but that is the emotional driver behind some of that stuff.
Well, it's a big letdown for me to hear you say that, Peter, because I was kind of counting on you to save my life. But okay,
I'll see if I can
33 days from now, when I'm choking and we're at that restaurant, you're going to be like, can't help you.
This isn't my purpose. I'm sorry.
This isn't my purpose.
The Heimlich is not my fate.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. You were describing that, and I think that I've never thought about, I have a couple thoughts that are trying to come out at the same time, but I've never really thought about purpose or working toward purpose or with purpose, however you want to phrase it. I've never thought about that as having downsides. And you mentioned about having, potentially that leading to burnout because you're so focused on that purpose that you're not paying attention to other things. And maybe I misinterpreted what you were saying, but that sounded like where you were going with that. And I wonder if, I don't know, the thoughts I had while you were saying that is like, on the one hand, I think you could set a purpose of, and this is my purpose, right? I like to help people. And I suspect that's probably too ambiguous a purpose or a goal, however you want to phrase that. But I enjoy those moments when I know that I have helped people. So there is something to it. but I think it'd be really hard for me to figure out, like, my purpose is to sell more widgets. That would never be my purpose. And so I wonder if, like, I am part of the reason that I don't really have a focus, which again has its plus sides and negative sides, is because my purpose in life is sort of ambiguous and ethereal. I don't feel like I have a purpose other than existing and hoping that I don't do harm and hoping that I help people.
Are you talking about like a big purpose? Like, this is the one thing that is my purpose.
Right. Yeah. And that's the other thing I was thinking about. Like, where, at what level are you putting that purpose? And I think that because, there's sort of a spectrum of that ambiguous purpose to very specific purpose. And then there's levels of, broad down to the very personal, that it can be hard to sort of dial that in. And then if you are working with or interacting with other people to move those purposes forward.
Yeah.
Purposes.
Porpoises.
Move those porpoises forward. Different show altogether. Like getting agreement on that and getting buy-in, getting people to share the effort to move those things forward. Like, I think that that's the part where things get all messed up, right? So, like, all of a sudden it's super important as an organization to remove all the text-based pronouns from your names within a system, as opposed to helping people find medical care. And I don't know. It's
when you are coming up against something that is against your intended purpose, that's, I think, or intended goals or aims or whatever. It's always, it always, at least I use it to challenge my own assumptions at first, because I always assume I'm wrong. Whenever I go into a situation, I'm like, I start off being like, where am I wrong with this? Where, I'm definitely thinking about this in a way that doesn't make sense because somebody's saying something different. And so it's a challenge to your identity. And I think that's, it was interesting talking about like when you said working towards your purpose is kind of as like a painful thing. It made me think of martyrdom. It's like, okay, yeah, that's what martyrs do. They have one intense purpose and, move towards it until something terrible happens to them. And yeah, that's not exactly where I am, and thankfully, and where I want to be, but obviously, but that's where I see it. So you can be counter to yourself. Other people can be counter to you, and I think what purpose is, and maybe we should talk about some specific purposes of something, but in general, it's like that's the moment you feel driven to do something for the sake of doing it, because it aligns with all of yourself. Like when we first met and I was getting into UX design and looking, to talk to people.
I'm so sorry about that, by the way.
Should have scared me off of it.
Yeah.
But you didn't, because you were passionate about it, and that made me passionate about it. And there were a lot of groups in Portland that were excited about, UX design and just design in general. It was beyond like the visual design work, service design and that kind of thing, that really there was a community there that reflected that said, okay, if you're doing these things, then you can make things better. And I'm like, oh, I like making things. I like making things better. There's a bunch of people saying we can do that. I think you had a more curmudgeonly take on it. Yeah, no, I know. Shocking, right?
Me?
and that helped me out a lot too, as I was looking at it. I was saying, okay, yeah, there are problems within just the way we approach design. There are problems in the way we approach research. And um, as someone, again, who's always looking for problems both externally and internally, I was like, okay, this is great. I can find all the problems. I can work on all the problems. And yeah, it was a great community, and you and I did a lot to build community, and then COVID killed things, and they're slowly coming back. But that was the other piece of it. I think I'm sure there are, again, folks who are drawn to things that just based on their own interests and needs. But I think for me, community is a big part of it. If I see what I'm doing reflected around me, that drives me, even more, because I am kind of just a ball of clay, I guess, and I'm kind of malleable to my community. So yeah, I don't know.
I think that might be a better way of being.
It ain't easy.
No, but speaking of curmudgeons, so I'm not so far gone that I think there's only one right way to do something. But I do see that there are a lot of wrong ways things are being done. And a lot of people, I think it's always a mix. It's more nuanced and complex than I can get out in this sentence. But a lot of people don't care / don't feel empowered to do anything about it / don't have any power to do anything about it. And so I think one of the things I struggle with is like, how do I have purpose when I'm existing within a system that, I'll just shorthand it and say, doesn't want my help? That's too far, but so maybe I should say it more betterer. Where I'm in a system that is highly resistant to change, even when that change is likely to be positive. And I think that's, like you described yourself as clay and malleable to the environment that you're in. And I think that I'm not that. And I partly I would like to be, and partly I don't want to be, because I'm right.
Yeah.
I'm like going back to the stuff we were doing pre-COVID. Like I am right that there's more, that all these disciplines in the human-centered world, there's more that they have in common than separates them. The things that separate them are surface layer stuff. People hold on to their silos, right? They really resist that way of seeing things.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, I don't
know. A silo is a community, and communities can be very, unwilling to break their boundaries, and for a reason. There's a reason that, I think there are small groups of people who are able to gather and work well together. And sometimes those groups just don't want to open up, don't want to connect to others. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that. Some good, some not so good. I've kind of relaxed my attitude to that a little bit. In terms of, I still believe you're right, and that these folks should cross-pollinate more. But I also know that that's impossible to the level that we were talking about in the past, after, trying to get it done. And also for people, there's the excitement of the new. And I think that plus people wanted to create their own thing. That's just going to that's a good thing. And that's going to happen. And it creates this, if there are a lot of little communities that are, coming up and they aren't aware of each other, maybe at some point they will be, and maybe they will connect, or maybe there'll be cross-pollination of different ideas that, and maybe not, and maybe nobody will talk to each other. There was I'm so out of touch. There was a great, and I should remember the name of it, but there was a great 3-day kind of mini conference around civic tech that happened in Portland that I didn't find out about until the day it was happening, the last day of it. And, I'm like, am I out of touch? But it's just, there are a lot of good things happening. And yes, I am out of touch, but,
yeah, no, it's the children. Simpsons reference. Sorry.
Wait, please, I need the Simpsons reference.
It's the one where Bart is skipping school and Principal Skinner goes to find him, and at one point Skinner's like, "Am I so out of touch?" No, it's the children. Like, yeah.
Oh man, yeah. But yeah, they're out there doing their thing, and it creates all these kind of opportunities to find out what's happening, and then once you get in there to say, hey, and did you also know that this is going on? And I find myself, that's what we were doing anyway when we were running PDX HCD and everything. And now that I'm getting back into after kind of a jaunt outside of Portland for a couple of years, now that I'm getting back into it, it's like, oh yeah, that's still a need, that people need to be connected. And I'm always still surprised when somebody hasn't heard of something, if like, I think I was just sharing out, for the 17,000th time, oh, Kaifu is a thing. Did you know that? And it's like, okay, there's always people who don't know about the thing. So I'm just find the joy in that, and just, that's it. People figure it out if they need it, and they won't if not. And,
right.
and I'm
fine.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Yes, and
yeah. Well, I feel like back when we were doing that, I definitely knew more about what was going on because I was intentionally, purposefully keeping track of it.
Yes.
And then trying to share that with people. But yeah, I don't remember what it was, but it was something in, I think, early December. And I saw someone post on Blue Sky about, hey, I attended this yesterday. And I was like, what? What is that? And like a bunch of the things at Aaron.
Yeah. Yep.
Aaron's design, impact plus design. Or design. Which one is it first? Design first or impact first?
Impact.
There we go. Impact plus design. A couple of things that were mentioned by some of the presenters. Never heard of that stuff before. Went and looked it up. Apparently there's like every Friday for the next few weeks, there's like these design talks on PSU campus.
Oh, cool. See, I had no idea.
One of them's by the associate design director of Planned Parenthood. And it's just like, okay, yeah. So, I mean, obviously I found out, but this is one of those rare times where I'm finding out prior to it actually happening. So.
Yeah. No, exactly. I mean, there used to be, and I don't know if it still exists, but Caligator used to be a sort of an aggregator of events. Up. Is that still up? Yeah.
It's still up, but it gears toward like tech things.
Right. Yeah.
Like straight up tech. So engineering related things.
Right. Yep. And Meetup, I haven't had much luck with. I only see Portland or Design Thinkers on there. And Eventbrite, I don't even know how to use, honestly. And every time I search Eventbrite, it's about 17,000 listings for job fairs and a bunch of stuff in Seattle. And even when I'm searching Portland, I feel like it's pretty useless. But yeah, I mean, as we're identifying needs here and probably both thinking about maybe we should start a calendar. I don't know. I'm also like, what do I want to...
We did that already.
Right. Exactly. I should have said restart. But like, what do I want to spend my time doing? And that question has been coming up a lot more for me because again, like I said, I like to work, and I generally will see problems and run towards them, and herd cats and chase rabbits down holes and do all those things. But I'm finding and being told by people around me as well, like, to take a step back and to, not do all the things that I get frustrated that they aren't being done, or that I think could be better if I did them this way. And I'm trying to figure out what to do with that, because, I want more time to, so my background's in art. That was the first 20 years of my life, trying to figure out if I could make art happen and going to school for it. And that's really, when it comes to what really draws me right now. No, that was not intentional. That's what I want to do. I want to be doing something creative. And I wish there was a better way to put it than making art or writing or something that could, and don't say content creation. Absolutely not. But something
hadn't even crossed my mind.
Something to do with
Etsy? No.
I want to like keep my hand moving, keep drawing, keep writing, keep whatever to make things that weren't there before that are fun, that other people might get something out of, but that isn't even really the main point of it. I like to work. I like to tend my creative garden, let's say. And I keep finding ways not to do that by digging into these things and, trying to solve these unsolvable problems that I can't just do, that takes a community to do. And yeah, it's easy to get distracted from that. Now, is that creative work my purpose? It's one of them, I think. I definitely feel a great sense of purpose when I'm doing that work. Maybe I'm using purpose wrong. Purpose as a noun versus purpose as a verb. Verb, I think. Doing my purpose versus, maybe they're both nouns. I'm not great at grammar, but when I'm doing things that are purposeful, I can feel it. I can just I feel it, and it's clear. And it could be a lot of different things. I can find a lot of purpose in cooking. I can. I've been able to order like groceries for my family when they're sick and stuff, and even that gives me a sense of purpose because I'm helping feed my family from 3,000 miles away or whatever. So yeah, I don't think going back to that whole concept of a singular purpose, it's just I have a lot of little purposes that I'm trying to chase down and deal with, and that's a little bit tiring. I wish I was just really into trains, that's my purpose. I just dig trains. I'm going to go and take pictures of, wait forever and be like, oh, there's a Acela 926. Not a thing. I'm going to go to different countries and take pictures of their trains. And that's what I do. I'm the train guy. I'm the guy who I have a whole train set in my bag. Like, yeah, that would be just so clear and understandable. But
yeah, so I don't know how to break this to you, Peter, but if you at all wanted to make a living doing that, you might have to become a content creator.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Damn. They got me again.
Well, I mean, you arted recently.
Yes, absolutely. Do you have a copy of the do a promo?
I do, but I'd have to reach slightly out of my reach. I can't reach it.
No, that was fun, and we should talk about that.
Future me might put something on the screen.
There we go. I'm just gonna lean. That's okay. Look at what we made. I don't know which hand is which. Oh, this is all reversed.
That's all right. The text is backwards too. Yeah.
Not for me. That's weird. Okay. A neighborhood of dead people. So that was great. You wrote the thing, and it took me about, what was it, 7 or 8 months to complete the art, maybe more. I don't know. In the midst of a very crazy year, but
yeah, I mean, it's not like you didn't work on it full time. So
no, but it was a great project,
which is what we expected. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really kept me going, kept me making art. And then when it was done, I was like, oh no, I'm not. Every afternoon or every evening when I sat down, I was like, oh, I don't have any art to make. And for some reason, I didn't just make stuff anyway. It was nice to have that framework of a story that I was working and a goal I was working towards, to keep it going. Um, and it's nice to be able to make art. It's harder for me to write at the end of a long day. Work will definitely sap my writing energy.
Yeah.
It's just all day long thinking and solving problems and using words to deal with things. It was very nice to work on this book and step back from that and just be in images and yeah, step away from the words.
Yeah. And I don't know. I know I started us off in this whole purpose thing, and I suspect there's an aspect of it because it's not a recent thing, but I'm kind of feeling lost a bit as to what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, which is more of the existential aspect of it. But it's also like, I was thinking, I think part of that previous conversation came up because we were talking about when an organization is having trouble determining the path and, basically fiefdoms within the organization are warring with each other. Like, how do you show up and help every day? How do you find purpose? How do you find energy to move things forward? And I think, just looking back on it, when we had this conversation, I think that's one of the things I was kind of struggling with, how to not just articulate, but how to even have. I don't know the extent to which it's a me thing. I know some of it is, it has to be, but
In terms of helping the organization find its purpose or your own within that organization.
I think it's a little bit of both, because one of the things, so like the coaching that I do for designers and researchy people, one of the things I tell them is that, we have evidence that almost every organization, you're only as useful to them as you are useful to them. And the moment you're not, you're gone. Which, capitalism, right? This is what we live in. Not great, not good, but for the purposes of getting the sentence out, okay, fine. So within your job at an organization, what can you carve out within that helps you with your purpose? Whether that's moving your career forward, your skills forward, your sense of duty, I don't know, like it could be sliced in many different ways. And again, kind of going back to this whole ambiguous purpose stuff, like maybe purpose is even too ambiguous a term, but and if you're looking at me right now, like, where's he going with this? I hope you have the answer, because I don't.
I do have the answer. No, I don't know.
Excellent. All right, go ahead.
Like you said, organizations, right? Workplaces, jobs, whatever, they will kind of toss you aside when they don't need you or can't afford you or various other reasons. And I guess one question that came up while you were saying that is like, how much might you be projecting the need for a purpose onto the organization that they don't or aren't able to recognize? Like, part of it could be coming from you wanting to find purpose within an organization that doesn't reflect you, that doesn't match what your needs are. And also, like, one of your needs is to see them working like a functional organization, and that's not something that they can take in at the time. It's like this. It's a little bit of a self-feeding kind of situation, but if you're working for a dysfunctional organization and you know how to make it functional, but they aren't ready for that or going to hear it, then yeah, you're going to be at sea at that place. From experience, we know this.
I wish you'd told me this before, Peter. This is news to me for the 17th time. Yeah, honestly, I think that's a big part of it. Like my drive to set things right, to make things work efficiently and effectively, like it's beyond the app. It's organizational. When a CTO and a CPO are at war with each other, essentially, it just makes it so hard to help move an organization forward, right? Because they're having an ego battle, and it's like, I want to help. I don't know how to help when it's that level of intransigence. And I get so frustrated.
Yeah.
Which is,
that's the part.
This is where it's the me thing, right?
Sure. Cause you know how to help, you know what they could do to change. But you can't catalyze that change. And I don't know. This feels like just a constant part of UX where we are influencers, but we're not leaders. We don't have the power. We have influence, and we can suggest to power what it should do, but we aren't given legitimate budgets and deciding power to make significant changes across an organization that we recognize need to be made. Right. So of course you're going to feel at sea in that kind of situation, because you're watching it happen in front of you. You know what they need to do, at least what initial steps they need to take. It's not like you're like, this is the perfect, it's like, here's how we work together is what we come in as better as UX folks, but they're not going to do that. They're not going to be receptive to it. And there's no reason for them really to listen to you unless you make a really convincing argument. So how is that
takes into account their motivations and constraints and yeah.
Yep, exactly. So, I always have this kind of concept of you not on an organization level, but even on a team level. I mainly work on kind of like the usual agile cross-functional delivery teams, and just all I want to do is set up as something where we are constantly learning and changing based on feedback from users and, the basics. We have a way of collecting this knowledge and analyzing it collectively and saying, here's what we need to change based on everything we've heard. And then we make those changes and then we understand, okay, this is the effect that it had because we're measuring the right things. We're talking to the right people. And then we can adjust things at that, from there. And I honestly just, I know the reason I haven't been able to get to that right spot is just, I would need to be able to create the team that would do that. Or search out for one that already exists and wheedle my way into it. It's not standard. It's not how Agile is structured, even though it's, kind of tries to speak to those things. It's just, everything that we're doing is just built for growth, for shipping things out and pushing things out and constantly for constant movement, but not constant improvement. Hey, it rhymed. That was not intentional.
That makes it true.
Right. Exactly. Rhymes are true. And yeah, it's absolutely frustrating to try to figure out how to communicate those things and influence. But at the same time, like this gets back to community or even culture, it's like you can't, if you're in a research situation, you're trying to learn as much about the culture community that you're in as you can and let them drive the whatever the design work is. And if you're in an organization, it's the same way, but they're always driving you towards the worst thing that makes them look better on paper and increases the amount of money that they can, get. So yeah, Finding the right community. Is that how we build purpose-driven organizations? Find the ones that are already out there and join them? I don't know.
Yeah, or be at a company that's large enough that it essentially functions like a bunch of small companies who work together.
Tell me more about that.
Well, I look at companies like, I first thought of this when I was at State Farm, which is where I started my career. But, you look at Google and Apple and Meta, like all the FANG companies, we'll say. And yeah, they're on paper one company, but they're not. They're a bunch of small companies, that are working on different product lines and service lines, and they all have their own budgets. They all have their own people who are in charge, and it just sort of functions like a small company. And yeah, they have to report up, and they often have to work with other areas within that larger company. But the teams that you work with, they're really separated from all the rest of that stuff. And so it's like you're kind of carved out in your own little space, and it's kind of like being in for some teams, it's kind of like being in a startup. Or a startup that has some customers, and they're not going to pivot away from whatever they're working on. But
yeah, so you can find your space in that smaller version or smaller aspect of the company versus the larger overall organization.
Yeah. And like, I remember, I don't remember who I was talking with, but I remember talking with somebody about their experience working with different teams at Nike, and their takeaway was Nike can be a great place to work with as long as you are working with the right team, because a lot of their teams function really independently. So again, it's almost like they're their own little companies who have their own full say about what they're doing. And some teams work really well together, and some teams are toxic AF. Which, people, so of course it's going to be like that. But
I'm doing a lot of work to help some of my folks and just people around me on the job hunt. And one of the things that keeps coming back to me that I figured out in my last job hunt was how to dig around for that kind of, to try to understand how toxic the the team you're hiring or you're interviewing for is, and to remember to go into those interviews with that in mind, that you're really just sure it's about a good fit, but a good fit, it is like, I'm working with a healthy team. That's really important to me at this stage in my career. I've worked with all sorts of, just on various levels of non-functioning or toxic or slamming our heads on tables situations, kind of teams. And it's like, and I've worked on teams like that got better and improved and worked well together. So there are different phases to as these, teams or groups sort of come together. But yeah, you can, when you're going into those interviews, you can pretty much see, if you talk to the hiring manager and ask them if everything's on fire all the time, or what the culture is like there, that kind of thing. I usually like to prompt with something like that. Like, are we just chasing fires all the time, or how do things get delivered regularly? You can ask those things and be prepared to say no. It's a different. I'm going to caveat by saying it's a very different job market than my last job hunt was 2020. So it's very different now. Much harder to get work. So obviously it's not as easy to reject toxicity as it was then, but it's definitely something to keep an eye out for and know what you're getting into.
Yeah, I think because of, some experience that I've had in working situations, I think one of my questions is, when trying to suss that out, is how often are designers, how often is their work making it into production? Because the answer to that will give me a sense to understand how much are the designers spinning their wheels, how much are decisions being changed at the last minute. And it depends on the rapport you've built with the hiring manager during that conversation, the extent to which you're going to get a direct answer. But
yeah, you can usually hear when when there's something else
hedging
going
around
on,
it, or
half answer or something. And, it's the nice part about, having a bunch of research experience, you can dig.
Yeah.
And if they're good, they'll appreciate your digging. And if they don't appreciate it, well, probably not a good fit.
Right. But still hire me though. Okay. Give me
money. Money, please.
Yeah.
We need to live and pay mortgages and things, please. Yeah, it's tough out there. And that's,
I don't care for it.
The other piece of it too. It's like going back to kind of the beginning. Oh, where's he going?
I'm listening.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Finding purpose in a situation that doesn't reflect you, because we need to live. We need money.
Yeah.
We need air. We need those things. So, and that's, for me, I mean, I do want to I do have a drive to keep things kind of moving forward and in a positive way. And I think that's, if I can do that in any way, if it's like I can make, even if I'm not solving great problems, if I can at least make things clear and have us agree on the crappy parts and get everybody talking and having a good conversation about it, that feels good. That feels like I'm there for a reason. Mm-hmm. But you can also be in a lot of situations where, to get into, the opposite, the other side of it is purposelessness, where you're constantly striving and trying to make changes, and things just keep getting worse, and you don't know why. And it keeps getting harder. That I don't have a great, aside from figuring out your exit strategy, I don't have a great answer for.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've had that experience in the past, and my exit strategy has been run away. And it's not like, it gets me out of that situation, but again, it kind of goes back to the coaching stuff. It's like, all right, it's crap now. What can you get out of the situation that's going to make the next situation easier? Next project, next job, client, whatever. Unless it's a truly, truly toxic environment, I believe there's always something you can learn from a situation that will help you next time.
Hopefully, yeah.
And I think for me, like long ago, I didn't really think in those terms. It was just more like, get me out of here. And, I think, again, going back to purpose and intentionality and things like that, I think I probably stayed too long at those places because I was nervous about not having a job or whatever. But I think if I had looked at it as, all right, I don't want to be here, but I'm going to use the rest of my time here to make it easier to get the next job. Or when I get the next job, make it easier to have that job. The first sort of inkling of realization I had was when I left State Farm and went to the MathWorks. I got an immediate understanding of, because that was like first job, second job. I got an immediate understanding of the things that really annoyed me about State Farm that were organizational, and the things that really annoyed me about State Farm And the reason I was annoyed is because I was messing things up. It was stuff I was bringing to the table. And so I was able to have that initial, I can compare these two experiences, like, that's on me, actually. But then I feel like I didn't take that next step and say, be proactive about, like, how am I going to use my time at the MathWorks to move my career forward and get better at this, get less reactive at the stuff. And honestly, I think it's only been in the past 8 years that I've started to do it. I mean, I think I've made a lot of progress, but like, I still feel like I'm struggling to fit in, to find my place, to find my purpose, back to the top of the conversation, you know?
What was an area, or what was the situation where you feel like you kind of failed and realized later that you were, the one kind of making the mistakes?
So I think one of the biggest things, and I still struggle with this every once in a while, usually when I'm like really, really, really stressed, is things that are obvious to me, I forget that they're not obvious to other people.
That's called a thing. There's a name for that.
Autism? Yeah. Yeah. I look forward to finding out what that's called, because I have that and I actively manage it.
I think it's like expertise blindness or something. Very.
Oh yeah. Expert blindness.
Expert. Yeah, something like that.
I've always thought that was more about, like, you as an expert hit a point where it's very difficult for you to articulate things about your work because it's so ingrained and just habit, that you don't really spend a lot of time thinking about the thinking that you do. You just do the thinking. Rather than...
no, that makes sense. I mean, for me, it definitely comes across, and I always have to, like, check myself when I'm calling myself an expert at anything. But, when I see folks, people that I'm mentoring or working with doing a thing, and I have that moment of like, wait, why that way? And it would be so much easier if they did it this way. And, I can still communicate it, but it's that feeling of shock of like, oh, I didn't even think of doing it another way than that. And then I have to think through, it's like, maybe they're doing it the right way and my way is wrong. And nope, this is faster if you do it this way. So there's kind of that pause of like, oh, I can also get myself in trouble by, well, anyway, that's a separate topic, but yeah.
Like, all the ways we get ourselves in trouble. I mean, it's just 2 ways, but
you only have 2 ways?
I mean, mostly, yeah.
Existing and what?
Existing and my... It's obvious to me, and it isn't obvious to me that it isn't obvious to you. You should know this because I know this. And I again, like, I don't do it as often anymore. It's usually when I'm just really, really stressed that I don't make that connection, and that I have to then, use 150 words where 15 should be enough, right? And sometimes it's fine because it's like my favorite XKCD comic is 1053, which is the Mentos and Diet Coke one. It's about not making fun of people when they don't know something, because it's an opportunity to share your love of that thing and teach them about it, right? And so I really, really believe that. But every once in a while, I just find it very frustrating that I'm like, okay, I got to slow down and I have to explain everything. I have to move them forward. And it's just like my brain wants to go.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to.
I'm there already. Like, come
all
on,
the
let's go.
ingrained knowledge and have to like figure out how
Yeah.
to articulate that and
Right.
everything.
And it's because sometimes to the expert blindness point, like sometimes it's hard for me to articulate why the way I'm proposing is a better, maybe not the right way, but certainly a better way to move things forward.
Yeah. And that's why it's, that's that move from like, when I see people moving up the stages of design and, having to uh, hand things off and delegate and everything, that's part of what makes it hard, because you have trained yourself to do this thing so well and that you can fly through it. And now you have to kind of hand off that work. And if you're not bored by it, if you're excited by it, if you still feel a sense of purpose from doing that work, it's hard to let go of that, and it's a tough decision. I had to make that decision early last year when I started down the management track, and say, I know I'm gonna not only not have to stop doing a lot of things that I'm excited about, but I'm also going to start forgetting how to do them. And so I'm also excited about these things over here, which is good, but I don't know how to do them very well. And how do I make that step? And part of me doesn't know how to, didn't know how to delegate. Learned that, yeah, I learned a lot of that this last year of just saying, I cannot do all these things. I also don't want to do all these things. I don't, want to be, I've designed enough buttons in my life. I'm happy when other people are doing those things, but I also can pick apart this and say why that isn't accessible, and why those color, all those basic pieces of UI design, I can take a look at that and rip things to shreds still. I just don't have to rip my own things to shreds. I can rip other people's things to shreds.
That's the dream.
A kind, of course, you got to,
right. Yeah. Supportive.
Yeah, all that
constructive criticism.
Exhausting stuff.
Less. Really? Okay. If you think so.
So then, yeah, it's like there's this, what's that book, Liminal Spaces by David Gray, or Liminal Thinking, that's it. And it's that step over the line into this next world and finding out what you do there. It's picking up another book, and figuring out what's happening. So yeah, no, I really, it's tough. It's tough. But it is this constant, like, readjusting into, and I don't know if all careers are like this. I don't know if this is how, like, a lot of career paths go. Again, I always have this sense that most other people have this crystal clear idea of the world, which I know isn't true, but I think a lot of people do. And they're just laser focused on this one thing, or they just, maybe not even laser focused, but it's just, they have clarity around it. And my own brain is just like just a undersea net full of fish that are just constantly flying around trying to figure out how to, escape or get to the next food source or something. It's just, that's how and so I never have that sense of people know what I'm thinking. I always, like, probably nobody knows it because I don't quite know what I'm thinking. So that's how I need to, and yeah, that's how I approach.
Well, that just means you're smarter than I am. So
does it though? It might mean the reverse is true. Maybe we're both smarter than each other.
Maybe it's both.
I think we're both smarter than each other. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah. Yeah, honestly, the last time that I really knew what I was doing in an organization that, for the most part, really knew what it was doing is running a restaurant. Because that's a very, how do I want to say this? It's a very repeatable process. All the parts are known. All the people who are contributing to getting through a service know what their jobs are. They know when they're doing them wrong. Assuming you've got 2 weeks of experience, or more. Yeah, and having that level of clarity even though there were times when it's like, what the hell is happening? Those were very ephemeral. They weren't the way the work gets done, which has been my experience with being in tech. It's like, what are we doing? Where are we going? I don't know. That way? Today?
Yeah. No, I used to work at a deli a long time ago, and it was just, there was something about, just having those same things that you were hitting every day, every week, and hungry people coming in to eat, and they needed to be eating food that was fresh and safe, and they wanted to get it in a timely fashion, get out, and they would make trash, and like everything is very focused. I'm sure that whoever was developing the stuff we had in the deli case and doing the actual budgets and figuring out the ordering, that was another level that I wasn't doing. But yeah, it all felt very real and kind of visceral and down to earth, and exhausting to spend 8 hours on your feet. And, and there were definitely some weird moments, like clearing out the fat thing under the sink, the thing that captured all the grease, and and hiding it in buckets behind the thing, and finding out later, oh, whoever, that wasn't legal. That's not how you dispose of grease. They're closed now, so it's fine. I can talk about it.
Yeah.
But whereas in tech, you're always building the new thing. You're like rebuilding and also, I think there is that sense, since you're living in the ideal world, people come in, and I tend to stay at places long term for whatever reason, not intentionally, but it just sort of seems to be my way. I like that kind of deep dive into the same thing. But you get people rotating through, and they'll discover the same thing you discovered a year or two ago. And like, that's it. That's what we have to focus on, this new thing. We got to focus on this new thing. And, curmudgeon you kind of comes in and says, well, not exactly new. In fact, if you read all this research or whatever, or if we've articulated it properly, it should just be in the DNA of the place, but it often isn't. So it's just a very different environment. Like there is that opportunity to constantly discover something and think you're going to be the hero who's going to, bring everybody together down this great new path. And kind of, it's very easy to not see all the stuff in the background that's happened in the past, because it hasn't been well documented, or it isn't built into the culture of the team.
Yeah. On the other hand, I don't mind the chaos of life in tech, as long as the team, the department, the organization wants things to get better.
Yeah. It feels great when you're moving towards kind of improvement, when you're actually moving in a good direction. That feels fantastic.
Yeah. More of that, please.
Yes, please.
Or some of that, please. I would like a job, please. Anyway. Hey, Peter, let's do 7 plus or minus 2 questions.
All right. I'm bad at math, so you keep track.
Okay.
What is this?
I'm going to ask you some questions.
All right.
And I know I'm terrible for doing this to you, but interpret the question. Interpret the question however it makes sense to you. Okay. There's no wrong answer.
All right. Yeah.
Classic research lead in.
All right.
What's one thing you would change? What's one thing you would change about your profession?
Oh, so these are going to be big questions. What's one thing I would change about my profession? I would. First thing that comes to mind is I would have more product managers be UX trained. I would have more product managers coming from UX. Because whenever I see a product manager who understands UX and gets the tech background, things tend to move much more smoothly.
Okay. Strong agree. Next question. What do you wish people cared more about?
Each other is the first thing. But really, yeah, I think if I go take that another step deeper, I would say maybe each other's how each person wants to exist in the world, like how the fact that we are separate individuals and that this person has a completely different perspective from you and they have a different way of existing in the world, that maybe that'll be fun for you to understand. Yeah.
Remember, big, deep questions. What's the best meal you've ever had?
Crap, that's probably the hardest one. Thankfully, and I'm glad to be able to say that. I used to have an answer for this, and I don't know if it's still true, but my answer used to be there was, I think it was when I was living in the Bay Area, it was a place I think called Cafe Venezia, and I had, this was early on in my eating new food, exciting foods days, because I grew up without restaurants within an hour of me, so there wasn't much food good food in the first 20 years of my life. But it was calamari, fried calamari, and they had the lemon slices in it, very thinly sliced, like dashed around the calamari, and the sauce was beautiful, and it just crunchy, and it just blew me away. Yeah, I had never had anything like that. And then I think later what took that one over, sorry, you didn't ask for two, but there was somewhere near Point, it was either Point Reyes or like the where they filmed the birds, somewhere in between there. There was a spot that had some of the best clam chowder I ever had, and we went up onto the cliffs over the beach and ate that. So that's you can't have anything better than looking over the beach and being in the right environment for it. So there's two.
Seeing the beach where the clams came from, probably,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Ready? I don't know if I have a new one, but yeah, I could keep going on food.
Yeah, well, so could I, but let's move on.
Okay.
Ready? Okay, next question. What do you wish you'd done differently?
Well, gotten rid of that thing that's like, other side, right up there. Wish I'd pulled that out of the wall right before this podcast. Other than that, no, I've done pretty good. Yeah, exercised at some point in my life. But mainly that thing above my head that I should have gotten rid of.
All right. Yeah. And as I'm sure you're well aware, no one was judging you about that until right now. So
that's why I had to point it out, because they didn't even know to judge me about that.
That's right.
I felt bad about that.
So you were helping them.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
All right. So I'm just going to ask it. I'm not even going to preface it. What would you do for a living if you stopped doing what you're doing now?
Oh, yeah. There's always the question of like, what would I make money off of? But I mean,
yeah. I mean, specifically, like, what would you? I think somebody I talked to recently said, shouldn't that question be more asked like, how would I exploit capitalism differently? But either way you want to take that, it would be like make a living.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I would love to work at a little art gallery. Maybe a co-op and help people sell their art and make my own art. That sounds delightful. I think there was a point where I felt like I needed to do something big with my life, and I don't think I need to do that anymore. I just want to be around good people making fun things and making each other laugh, and yeah, that would be that's all I need at this point. Yeah.
Sounds like we're opening a gallery. Is that what I hear?
Sure.
Okay, great.
You did say make a living. So this is like ideal world where that's possible. Maybe I have to move to the coast to do that. I don't know.
Yeah, don't move to the coast. All right, last question. Imagine it's a year from now. What do you hope to not be carrying anymore?
The fear of what it's going to be like a year from now is what I'd like to not be carrying anymore. That's a scary thought given where we're at, February 7th, 2025 for future civilizations who dig this up and, wondering what's happening. I would love not to be carrying the daily kind of fear and exhaustion of the fire hose of antisocial changes that seem to be happening, constantly. That would be delightful. That would be very nice. Other answer is about 20 pounds, but one or the other.
Why not both? .gif, right?
I have control over one of those things. So, I mean, probably just one of those things.
All right. You made it.
Oh, okay. We did the math. Those were okay. Great.
Let's stop talking.